Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, the topic under discussion is a continuation of our previous topic that we had started discussing in regards to the grave. You were here, actually, in regards to the grave. And we went over a couple of hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and a couple of facts. The fact is that we are all going to go into our graves. The fact is that me and you and every single person that is upon this earth will eventually end up in his grave. Now, the grave, the picture that we get in our minds is that a grave 6 foot underground. Now, what if somebody dies in the ocean? The ocean will be their grave. Somebody's body turns to ashes, or it's in the air, it becomes dust. Then their grave will be wherever their particles land, right? So a grave is, in a general sense, the pit that is dug, which is approximately 6 foot inside, that is dug, and each one of us are going to be placed in our graves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us at that time. Now, as a believer, we have a fear of the grave. We have a fear of entering into the graves because we understand and we know without a doubt that the grave is just, a person doesn't cease to exist. Because for those people who are atheists, or those people who believe that they are going to cease to exist once the soul disconnects from the human body, for them, to face death might be easier because they do not believe in an afterlife, even though there is one. But for those people who actually believe that there is going to be an afterlife, they understand that death is a transition. And and that's why there might be insecurity, uncertainty. And because of that uncertainty, not that a believer should, because he has spent his time in belief, just to spend in one's time in belief is a great ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can just make that into a means of forgiveness, irrespective of the a'mal that has been done. But because we know that there are other possibilities also, and there is uncertainty, and that uncertainty brings insecurity, and that insecurity instills fear in one's heart. That's why a believer, even though he understands that it's the only way to meet Allah is through death, but he still, in his heart, he still fears it. He still fears the moment. He still fears that what is going to happen to him at that time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for him and easy for us. So we said that the reason a person can be burying his own beloved, but he's still heedless of his own janazah, he's heedless of his own grave. And Imam Ghazali concluded, after explaining everything, he concluded on this point that he has come to this conclusion that the reason people are heedless of death, people are not mindful of death, and people today go to the graveyards and they are not thinking about their own deaths, and they do not think about them being lifted on people's shoulders, and they are still chatting and socializing at the time when a funeral is taking place. They say Imam Ghazali has concluded that it is only due to sin and excessive sin and disobedience to Allah that the hearts have become hard, and they have become hardened to the fact that one day I am going to die. I am also going to be lifted on people's shoulders. I am also going to be bathed in the same manner this person is being bathed. I bathe myself my entire life, but when I'm going to depart from this world, somebody else is going to be in charge and responsible to be bathing me. I have clothed myself my entire life, alhamdulillah, but when I depart from this world, I will not be able to clothe myself. Somebody else is going to clothe me. on what preparations we have made for that time and for that moment. It says that the only reason a person stops preparing for it, a person stops, he becomes heedless towards it, is because of excessive sin and disobedience. And again, this is at a time 1,000 years ago when this book was written. This is in that time these comments are being made of excessive sin. Can you imagine in today's environment, if the Sahaba came, or if Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi came, if Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi spent so many years in contemplation in the jungles in that era, I think he probably dedicate himself to the jungle if he ever came to in our time. But again, it says that these are points of contemplation done hundreds of years ago, but the fruition and we are taking and we are benefiting from the contemplation somebody had done so many years ago. It says that where are we? Hatta nasina Allah Ta'ala, and because excessive sin, disobedience, which has led to hearts have become hard, we have forgotten who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ, and do not be like those who have forgotten Allah, and the result of forgetting Allah was that a person forgot himself. A person, he forgot his mission. He forgot why he was placed in this dunya. And do not think that it cannot happen to us. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afiyah. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afiyah. There's so many temptations and around us. Nobody should claim فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Nobody should claim purity. فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. I just, who a'lamu biman ittaqa. Allah knows who. Allah knows very well the one who's God conscious. Allah knows very well the one who's muttaqeen. You don't need to make these claims about yourself. We do not need to make these claims about ourselves that suddenly I am better than the other person. Allah knows. فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Or you are not. Do not think of yourself. Do not put yourself on that pedestal. This is also another arrow from Shaitan's quiver. It is just another arrow of one of the arrows of Shaitan, that he makes you think that you are okay. That you are okay. It's everybody else that others need. The reason we have this, remember, the reason there is mischief and disorder upon earth is because of us, not because of third person. It is because of us, not because of a third person. And until we do not realize that we are the cause of that disorder, me, I, and myself, I are the cause of that disorder, we won't do anything about it. Because a person continuously keeps thinking that order needs to come from somewhere else. Actually, order needs to come from here, whereby it will reflect in, that order will reflect in others. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the opportunity to bring our lives into order. Remember, the purpose of reading these books is to come to this realization on how much we are drowned in sin, how much we are drowned in disobedience, and how much purification our heart is in need of. These are the points of realization and contemplation that a person needs to contemplate on. Otherwise, trying to implement it and fit this on others is easy, and it is just another ploy of Shaitan if you follow him down that path. It says that, and when we forgot Allah, we forgot the Akhirah. When we forgot Allah, we also forgot the Akhirah. وَالْأَهْوَالَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ أَيْدِينَا. And all those scenarios and the situations that we are going to face, which are before us, they're actually before us, but we are heedless towards it. There's a poem in the Urdu language. I say it many times. I will translate it in English also for those of you who do not understand. But Isa understands. Isa claims to understand Urdu. I'll say the couplet for him. It says, قدم سوء مرقد نظر سوء दुनिया किधर जा रहे हो किधर देख रहे हो. You understood that? That our footsteps are walking in the direction of the grave. The footsteps are walking in the direction of the grave. Our sight is towards the dunya and the beauty of the world, and we're bedazzled by it. You know, just like when you take a flash and your eyes lose focus for that moment. Our eyes have lost focus, and when you lose focus, we can't see, and we go into a state of we're unable to see where we are, in which way we are going, because in a similar fashion we're bedazzled by the desire of the dunya. You know, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ, the desire of passion and lust, etc. We're bedazzled by it, and then we don't see that we are going towards our grave, because where are you going, where are you looking? Which direction are you headed in, and which direction are you looking in? You're headed towards the grave, looking towards the dunya. It's a recipe for distress. When you go home today, look towards the left, try to go straight. Put your head towards the left, and then try to go straight. See if you get home or not. It's difficult, right? It's difficult. You'd be peeing, you'd be doing this just to make sure you're going straight. Even then, the possibility, if you were to drive past parked cars on the left and the right, there's a possibility you're going to scratch something, right? So, dunya is like that. If we don't focus, if we don't become alert, then we are going to, then the possibility of a disaster is imminent. Because فَصِرْنَا نَلْهُ وَنَغْفِلُ وَنَشْتَغِلُ بِمَا لَا يَعْنِينَا. We became a nation. This is 1,000 years ago. Because we became a nation that indulged in amusement and play. This state was being made how long? Hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Because we became a nation that became indulged in amusement and play and heedlessness. And one of the biggest things that have occupied our minds and our heart is to occupy yourselves in those things that are not of your concern, to concern yourselves in those things that are of not your concern. Nowadays, we have become the most gossiping nation in the world. Congratulations. We are part of the most gossipy nation in the world, and to indulge in other people's lives and what other people is doing is more important. The latest news, the latest news on the block, the whispers in the grapevine is more important than the deen. Do you know what's happening? Or you don't know what's happened? Oh, whilst you were away, this happened. Allahu Akbar. Understand? So, to concern yourselves with things that do not concern you. Can somebody give me more examples of that? Elaborate on it. Anybody? Why should I do all the talking?
Celebrity news.
Celebrity news. Sports. Difficult one. You're going to drive a knife into people's hearts, Dr. Sam. Sports. And especially following the which game? Especially following the who? The Ravens. Following the Ravens is a waste of time. Concerning yourself with other people's success and, busying yourself and, thinking that you're going to go do that and you're going to do this. It's all concerning yourself with things that have no concern to you. What else? World politics. Forget world politics. What about masjid politics? What about your neighborhood politics? What about your family politics? What about your relative politics? Everybody's looking outside. Look inside. Look inside how much we concern ourselves with what the other is doing, right? In your own circles, forget your outside external circles. We're just so busy there's just enough gossip to entertain us during the day with our internal affairs, right? فَنَسَّلُ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى أَنْ يَقْضَى. Imam Ghazali Rahmatullahi makes a plea, and he says, we ask Allah that He awakens us from our slumber. Allah awakens us from a slumber. Who thinks that there might be passing life in a slumber state? One person, two people, three people, four people, five people, six people, seven people. It's a zombie state. Wake up. The solution to that is to wake up, is to continuously think that you are in a state. If you don't even recognize that you're in a slumber, that's a problem in itself. You understand? Because فَنَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ الْيَقَظَةِ, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we wake from this heedlessness, and we wake from this snooze and this slumber. فَإِنَّ أَحْسَنَ أَحْوَادِ الْحَاضِرِينَ عَلَى الْجَنَائِزِ. Because if you really want to know that what is the best state a person should be in the presence of the deceased, in before a janaza, is بُكَاؤُهُمْ عَلَى الْمَيِّتِ, is that there should be tears flowing from their eyes in regards to the deceased. وَلَوْ أَقَلُوا وَلَوْ أَقِلُوا, and if they were to understand, if they were to have some understanding, because if there was to have some understanding, لَبَكَوْا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, they would also take some time and opportunity to cry upon yourselves, to cry upon our own state. لَا عَلَى الْمَيِّتِ, there is no need to cry upon the deceased. And he says, why? نظر إبراهيم الزيات إلى أناس. Ibrahim ibn Zayyat, he looked towards a group of people. يترحمون على الميت. They had collectively got together, and they were feeling sorry upon the deceased, and they said, poor guy has died, and he was such a great guy, etc., etc., etc. They were saying, فقال لو ترحمون على أنفسكم لكان خيرا لكم. Alas, had you had mercy upon yourselves, it would have been better for you. If you had mercy upon yourselves, you would have presented yourself earlier. It says, أنه نجا من ثلاثة وجه, because remember, the deceased has already passed 3 stations. Allahu Akbar. Because you're feeling sorry for the guy, he's already passed 3 hurdles. Because which hurdle was that? Because he saw the angel of death. Allahu Akbar. He saw the angel of death. That was a great hurdle in itself, because he already been there, done it. Number 1. He goes, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. He goes, he tasted the bitterness of death. He's already done it. Because you're feeling sorry for him, he's already passed 3 hurdles. And the 3rd hurdle, وَخَوْفُ الْخَاتِمَةِ, and the fear and the uncertainty of what his end is going to be like. And now that he has been put at peace, and now he knows what his end is going to be like, that is also a source, that is another hurdle that he has passed. Oh, and because he's talking about a believer, because it's a hurdle that a believer has passed. So 3 hurdles of, because why are you feeling sorry for him? If you want to feel sorry for somebody, feel sorry upon yourself, because you haven't passed these 3 hurdles and you don't know what you're going to face. True, right? So true. Such a true statement. وقال أبو عمرو بن العلاء, because Amr ibn al-Ala rahmatullahi alayhi says, جلست إلى جرير, Imam Jarir rahmatullahi alayhi, I was sitting with him, وهو يملع على كاتبه شعرا, and he was dictating some couplets to his scribe. He was dictating some couplets to his scribe. فَطَّلَعَتْ جَنَازَةٌ, suddenly a janaza came before us. فَأَمْسَكَ, and he withheld himself, and he stopped. And he says, وَقَالَ شَيَّبَتْنِي وَاللَّهِ هَذِهِ الْجَنَائِزِ. He goes, these janaiz and these funerals have made me old. وَأَنْشَأَ يَقُولُ, and then he stopped the couplet that the scribe was writing, and then he said the following couplets. He goes, تُرَوِّعُنَا الْجَنَائِزُ مُقْبِلَاتٌ. It goes, puts us in a state of fear. تُرَوِّعُنَا, makes us fear, gives us fear, gives us khawf. What gives us fear? Al-janaiz, these funerals gives us fear. Muqbilatun, that come towards us. Meaning the to and fro of funerals, one funeral and the next funeral and the 3rd funeral, it gives us, it instills fear in our hearts. وَنَلْهُ حِينَ نَذْهَبُ مُدْبِرَاتٌ. It goes, the moment that the janaza passes by us, and the janaza is now past us, and we are now looking towards the back of it, mudbiratun, because it puts us in a state of enjoyment and play and heedlessness. And we enjoy those moments when meaning that the fear is for a fleeting moment. The fear is for a fleeting moment, and nowadays it's not even for a fleeting moment. It goes karaw'atin thul'atin. It goes like a group of people. Karaw'atin, and the fear of a group of people. Lighari dhi'bin. Look, when they're walking past the cave or it's not a cave of a wolf. What do you call it? Not the pack of the wolf, where the wolf lives. The den. The den. It goes the den. It goes when the wolf is in his den, right? And you see the wolf's den, and you're walking in the jungle, and you're walking through that mountain pass, and you see the den of the wolf. How much fear the group of people, then they tiptoe and they slowly walk around the den of the wolf. Because in a similar fashion, فَلَمَّا غَابَتْ, and when that group of people passes by the den of the wolf and it disappears from their sight, عَادَتْ رَائِعَاتٌ, even though their fear also dissipates. The fear also dissipates. So this is the couplet. It goes, when janazas come, it should still instill fear, and the person should maintain fear. When the janaza comes, it should instill fear and it should maintain fear. But that's not what happens. Janaza comes, people are laughing, people are talking. Yaar, bade dinon se nazar nahi aaye. Yaar, we've not seen you lost in so many days, man. Look, where were you all these days? Bas janaza ke liye hazir. Chalo mulaqat ho gayi yaar. Yeah, at least we met each other. What's this? That's no time to, that's no place to socialize. It's not a place to socialize. It's a place to contemplate that this janaza we are going to be lifted on the shoulders of people also one day. But you know, these young men with their mashallah youth, they think that they're never going to die. The young men with their youth, they think they're never going to die. That's why they completely stay in their slumber, and they continue stay in that slumber state until something comes and wakes them up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us awake before that time comes that it says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, when the angel of death comes and takes the soul, because Allah says in the Quran, in Urdu, the translation in Urdu, aaj teri aankhein, teri nigahi badi tez ho gayi hai. Now you are watching. Now you are watching. Now you are looking. You know, when a person is in fear and he goes white in fear, and what happens to the pupils? When a person is focused, what happens to his pupils? They dilate, right? And then now it goes, فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ. Allah says that's what it means. فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ. Your pupils are dilated. You cannot look here and there. You're fully focused now, and you're fully awake. All that ghafla has gone away. All that sleep and slumber has gone away. All the sin and the darkness of the heart and the hardness of the heart has disappeared. Now you are looking. Now you are watching. Now you are seeing what is the end. Allah make it easy for us. It goes, فَمِنْ عَادَابِ حُضُورِ الْجَنَائِزِ. The etiquette, the mannerisms of presenting oneself at a funeral is a tafakkur, contemplation. Tanabbuh is to make oneself aware and beware and put your state in that state. One day this is going to happen to me also. Wal isti'dad, preparation. Wal isti'dad, preparation. Wal mashi amamaha, and to walk before the janaza ala hay'ati tawadu'i, in a very humble state. In a very humble state. So you may walk behind or you may walk in front. But because ala hay'ati tawadu'i, it should be done in a humble state. Kama dhukirat adabuhu wa sunanuhu fi fann al-fiqh. Like in the books of fiqh, that the adab and the methodology has been described in those books, a person should look towards him. وَمِنْ آدَابِهِ. Because subhanallah, the first most important etiquette, and I want everybody to engrave this in your heart, the most important etiquette of the deceased is husnul dhan, good perception. Even if he was bad, he was a great guy. He was a believer, he was a great guy. Husnul dhan, good perception, not bad perception of your Muslim brother. وَإِن كَانَ فَاسِقًا, be it him be a sinner, be it a person who is a sinful person, you know of his sin or you don't know of his sin, or he had the outlook of a person who was disobedient to Allah, it is your job to have good perception in regards to that person. Number one, we can do that, inshallah. You will never have bad perception ever again. You promise? I promise myself. Do you promise? No. Inshallah, permanently, huh? Never, never ever, never ever, inshallah, huh? Never ever. وَإِسَاءَةُ الظَّنِّ بِالنَّفْسِ. Because in order to balance that, in order to make that thought a reality, you first have to have bad perception of yourself. You said that you would. You can't accomplish that if you keep thinking you're great. You can't accomplish that if you keep thinking that you're great. We're not great, are we? We could be so many times better, so much better, right? But we're not, because of our own laziness. So let's look at our faults instead of looking at the faults of others. Until there's a nice poet, but I can't remember it. Pari jo apni khubi apni buraiyon pe nazar to. Funny. There's a nice couplet. There was a moment that everybody's evils were in front of my eyes, but the day I looked at my evil, everybody's evil fell before my eyes. That's what it says, right? So anyway, because وَإِسَاءَةُ الظَّنِّ بِالنَّفْسِ وَإِنْ كَانَ ظَاهِرُهَا الصَّلَاةِ. Because look, even if your external might be great, even your external might be great, but still have bad perception of yourself, and have good perception of the deceased, even if his external might be not so great. That's why those people who have bathed the deceased, who's bathed the dead person? One person, two people, three people. Who did you bathe? One of your friends, uncles, partially. Because if you bathe the person, because sometimes you might see something that might not be so nice. That doesn't mean that you disclose it. A person who's bathing the deceased is also ameen, is under as al-majalis bil amana, that he's also a majlis in which that amana cannot be disclosed to others. You should say good things. Ya Hazrat ka chehra. You should have seen his face. It was mashallah so nice. So much nice sense were coming out from him. He was so happy. He looked at peace. He looked calm, etc., etc., etc. You understand? Because فَإِنَّ الْخَاتِمَةَ لَا تَدْرِي حَقِيقَتُهَا. Because listen, the end, nobody knows its reality. You don't know its reality. You don't know first the reality of the deceased, how was his end. He might have been a great end. And you don't know your own end. So how can you have bad perception of somebody else when you don't know your own end? That cannot happen. Because وَلِذَلِكَ رَوَى أن عمر بن ذر رحمة الله عليه أنه مات واحد من جيرانه. One of his neighbors died. وكان مسرفا على نفسه. And he was a person who transgressed against himself. Musrif, a person who went beyond the limits. فتجافى كثير من الناس عن جنازته. تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع. تتجافى كثير من الناس عن جنازته. Majority of the people didn't go to his janazah. فهضرها. So he goes, he went to that janazah. وهو صلى وصلى عليها. And he himself prayed janazah upon that one man. He went himself. فَلَمَّا دَلَّ فِي قَبْرِهِ, and when he was lowered in his grave, وَقَفَ عَلَى قَبْرِهِ, he stood upon his grave and he said the following statements. He goes, يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهُ يَا أَبَا فُلَانٍ, Allah have mercy upon you, O son and the father of such a person. فَلَقَدْ سَحَبْتَ عُمُرَكَ بِالتَّوْحِيدِ. It goes, your entire life you've spent with Tawheed. Your entire life you believed in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Because even a sinful person if he's a believer, he has Tawheed. He goes, he praised that one point of his. He goes, your entire life you were accompanied by Tawheed. وَعَفَرْتَ وَجْهَكَ بِالسُّجُودِ. And when you got this chance, and when to make the opportunity to do sajda to Allah, you put your head in the soil and you made sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Congratulations to you, O man, O son of such a person. He goes, وَإِنْ قَالُوا مُذْنِبًا ذُو خَطَايَا. He goes, even though people might say مُذْنِبٌ, a man full of sin, وَذُو خَطَايَا, a man who was a person who had many mistakes and many faults, sinner with many faults, the people say. He goes, people say, sinner with many faults. فَمَنْ مِنَّا غَيْرُ مُذْنِبٍ, who is amongst us without any sin? وَغَيْرُ خَطَايَا, without faults. He goes, فَمَنْ مِنَّا غَيْرُ مُذْنِبٍ وَغَيْرُ ذِي خَطَايَا, who is amongst us without faults and without sin? Nobody. He goes, why did the people stay away from the janazah? Do you understand? You don't know sometimes. Just having the right people around you might be a source for your forgiveness. Allahu Akbar. Allah. Finish or next? Next or finish? You guys, tell me. Shall I tell you the next story, the long one? He goes, أن رجلا من المنهكمين. Because a person who used to indulge in sin. There was a man who was indulged in sin, drowned in it. Fil fasadi, and he was drowned in causing disorder. مات في بعض نواحي البصرة. He died in a certain part of Basra. He died in a certain part of Basra. فلم تجد امرأته من يعينها. فلم تجد امرأته من يعينها على حمل جنازته. Because she couldn't find anybody who would assist her to lift his janazah. Why? إذ لم يدري بها أحد من جيرانه. Because everybody knew of him from his neighbors, and everybody knew of him. لكثرة فسقه, from his excessive sinning, everybody knew. فاستأجرت حمالين. So she rented 2 people to lift his body. وحملتها إلى المصلى, and they lifted the body and took it to the Eid place where they pray the Eid prayer, so that the Salatul Janazah could be prayed. He goes, فما صلى عليه أحد. Not a single person came out of the city. Such a bad, as he was known as such an evil man, not a single person left the city to pray his janazah. فما صلى عليه أحد فحملتها إلى الصحراء. Then nobody came, so she had the two people that she rented. He goes, take him out into the desert so that we can bury him there. فكان على جبل قريب من الموضع. A man, a zahid, a sheikh, a sufi, a pious man. He used to dwell in the nearby mountains. He goes, فكان من الموضع زاهد من الزهاد الكبار. He was known as a great zahid, and he was found in that locality. فرأته كالمنتظر للجنازة. As they arrived in the Sahara, she found him waiting for the janazah there. It was as if he was waiting for the janazah. ثم قصد أن يصلي. Then he intended to pray his salat. Ooh, فانتشر الخبر في البصرة. It goes, that news spread like wildfire in Basra. It goes, the people came out. It goes, that Zahid is going to pray janazah on this guy. Let's go see. Tamasha dekhte hain. Let's go see what's going to happen. Let's go see. Because Zahid came down from the mountain. لِيُصَلِّيَ عَلَى فُلَانٍ, that he pray upon such a, that Zahid is known never to come down. Something must be happening. Let's go out and see. فَخَرَجَ أَهْلُ الْبَلَدِ, people of the vicinity and the city came out. فَصَلَّ الزَّاهِدُ, the Zahid led the prayer. وَصَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ, and all the people prayed behind him, the janazah salah. وَتَعَجَّبَ النَّاسُ مِنْ صَلَاةِ الزَّاهِدِ, people were astonished and taken back by the Zahid's salat upon that individual. فَقَالَ, he said, قِيلَ فِي الْمَنَامِ, because I was sleeping last night and it was said to me in my dream, أَنزِلْ إِلَى مَوْضِئِ كَذَا, come down from your mountain and go to such a place. تَرَى جَنَازَةً, you will see a janazah there. لَيْسَ مَعَهَا أَحَدٌ, there will be nobody accompanying that janazah. إِلَّا إِمْرَأَةٌ, except a woman. فَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you that you pray salat upon it. فَإِنَّهُ مَغْفُورٌ لَهُ, because he has been forgiven. He is what? Forgiven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven him. فَزَادَ تَعَجَّبَ النَّاسِ, oh, the people become even more astonished. Because how come? You know, the guy was known. فَاسْتَدْعَ الزَّاهِدُ إِمْرَأَتَهُ, Zahid called his wife. The Zahid called his wife. وَسَأَلَهَا عَنْ حَالِهِ, and he investigated in regards to this in his state. وَأَنَّهُ كَيْفَ كَانَتْ سِيرَتُهُ, and what was his lifestyle, what was his biography like. He goes, tell us about him. قالت كما عرف, he goes, as people know, كان طول نهاره, his entire day في المأخوري, he would spend in places of intoxicants, meaning he would spend in the pub or in the bar. In the bars, that would be his day. مشغولا, busy بشرب الخمر, drinking wine. فقال, the Zahid says, انظري, take another look at his life. هل تعرفين منه شيئا من أعمال الخير, do you know of him to have done any good? Do you know of him to have done any good? قالت نعم, she says yes. ثلاثة أشياء, because three things this man had great qualities in him. He had, even though he had his evil surpassed his good, but he had three good things inside of him. Number one, because إذا أفاق من سكره, when he would wake up from his intoxicated state, when he would become sober. وقت الصبح, in the morning hours. يبدل ثيابه, he would change his clothes. ويتوضأ, and he would make wudu. ويصلي الصبح مع جماعة, and he would pray the morning prayer with jama'ah. ثم يعود إلى المأخور, then he would direct himself towards the pub and the bar, and he would spend the entire day. ويشتغل بالفسق, and he would indulge himself in sin. والثاني أنه كان أبدا لا يخلو بيته من يتيم أو يتيمين. الله أكبر. Because his house would never be empty. He would always have one or two yatim always in his house eating food. Always. He would always be merciful upon the yatim, the orphans. Because وَكَانَ إِحْسَانَهُ إِلَيْهِمْ, and his favor towards the orphans أَكْثَرُ مِنْ إِحْسَانِهِ إِلَى أَوْلَادِهِ, would be more than his favor upon his own children. He would give them more attention than he would to his own. وَكَانَ شَدِيدَ التَّفَقُّهِ لَهُمْ, and when they would not be around, he would miss them dearly. He would miss them dearly when they are not around. والثالث, and the third quality of his, أنه كان يفيق في أثناء سكره, in the middle of his, as he is intoxicated, and certain moments when he used to become alert and become awake. في ظلام الليل, in the darkness of the night, when he would become certain, his intelligence or his intellect would come back to him for a few moments in the darkness of the night. فيبكي, he would cry before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he would say, Ya Rabbi, ayyu zawiyatin min zawaya Jahannam, which corner of Jahannam, which part of Jahannam have you assigned? Turidu, you intend, and tamlaha bihadha al-khabith, that you intend to fill this khabith with. Which part of Jahannam are you going to throw this evil man? Which part of Jahannam have you assigned for him? Yani nafsahu, meaning directing it to himself. Because when she said this statement, because fansaraf az-zahid, the zahid walked away from there, and he knew exactly why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had forgiven him. That's why a person shouldn't think himself to be something and to others are nothing. You don't know what the state of the other person is. You don't know if the other person might be the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't know that. That's why don't look down on others in that manner. And even if it is a janaza of a fasiq, then first make an intention to go there. Because a lot of people will go to the janaza of shuyukh because of the honor and the reverence. He goes, how many people attend the janaza of people who've committed sin and who've committed evil? He goes, when you find these type of janaza, make an intention to go this type of janaza. Maybe as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving that individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also forgive us, inshallah. Let's do muraqabah, inshallah. Close your eyes. Think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think of death. Think of your maut. Think of the time that we have to depart from this world. Think of what is going to happen to us. Think of the sensitivity of that moment. Think of the angel of death and what are we going to do and what form he's going to come in before us. Think about the angels that are going to take our souls. Think about the last moment and what state we will be in. Think about how when we will be alone in our graves, what is going to be happening to us. Think and contemplate on these moments. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. برحمتك يا رب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.